Hey, what is going on, guys? It is just Alyssa today. Noah is behind the camera for this one, but we are starting my own little cooking segment, which is very different from the music reviewing and random vlogs that Noah has done on his channel in the past, but he has encouraged me to start doing my own, and what better than the thing that I like to do probably the most, which is just cook things. I've really enjoyed it since I was a little kid, so why not just make it into a YouTube video segment on this channel now. So we have a few recipes lined up. We don't know how many we're gonna do yet, but today we're going to be doing pot pie, so a vegetarian version of chicken pot pie, and that'll be all of the types of recipes that we do. They're all going to be vegetarian based, good, easy, well, relatively easy, and pretty budget friendly for college students, depending on what the budget is, of course. But we're gonna give it a try and yeah, start with pot pie today. First, we are going to start out making the crust. This is relatively easy to do. It's just kind of difficult to get the right consistency of the crust. So it's a really basic recipe. It's just flour, salt, a little bit of sugar, and butter and ice water. But there is butter, so it is not vegan. This recipe is not vegan. It is vegetarian for reference. But I already have all of the things measured out. So you first just combine 1.5 cups of flour with 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt. So now we are just adding the butter, so it's going to be 1 cup of cold butter, and you want your butter to remain as cold as possible. And so instead of chopping it up and incorporating it by hand, I mean, we're going to still incorporate it by hand, and it's already getting a little melty in my hand, but grating it just makes it combine into the flour just a little bit easier, especially if you don't have a pastry cutter, which just combines butter into flour easily. So it's just a little tip to make it slightly easier to get all this butter well and combined into the flour mixture. And so you do want to work quickly, because as you can see, I'm quickly getting butter all over my hands, and you want to keep the butter as cold as possible so it will keep firm and make it so it's not really oily and messy. And so if you need to, you can put, I might go put this stick back into the refrigerator for a little bit and just let it cool off some and solidify a little more, so it might be a little bit easier to grate and get in there. So there you have all the grated butter from the stick, but I'm going to do, this is about half of this stick so far, and then I'm going to do a whole other stick to make it a cup. Oops. So we will go put this back in the fridge and then finish grating this and then combine it all together with our hands. Okay, so now that all the butter is grated and now forming one big lump, you just kind of have to just massage it in there with your hands. Make sure your hands are clean. I just washed mine. And you just kind of just gotta pick it up with the flour and pinch it. I mean, there's no other way to describe how to do this process than just kind of pinching it into little balls. And you do want to keep your butter as cold as possible, so if it starts to get really warm, I mean, it's soft because it's all been grated, but if it starts to get warm, then you need to just pop it in the refrigerator for another 1 to 2 minutes. And if you don't want to go through this process or just get your hands really dirty, like someone behind the camera hates having things on his hands or body or anywhere, he would much rather prefer to use the just pre-made store-bought crust, which is also perfectly fine. That's what I usually use if I'm just needing a little convenience for this. But this recipe does make, this pie crust recipe makes the top and bottom crust, which you need for the pot pie. But so the actual pot pie recipe makes 2 whole pies, so if you were going to use homemade crust for both of them, you need to double this recipe. So we're going to make the full pot pie recipe, but for the other one, I just bought the store-bought crust. Yeah, that's going to be our little secret, even though this is going publicly on YouTube. But, so yeah, you need to just keep pinching it until eventually you'll get to little pea-sized pieces, and I think we're gonna have to about to put it into the refrigerator for a couple minutes to harden up this butter, because it's getting pretty warm. So we're gonna go do that, and then I will continue to just kind of roll it apart until all of the flour is kind of coated and there are little pea-sized little bits, and then we will add more flour, which we will show in the next part. Now we are going to add the remaining 1 cup of flour to the mixture, and it just all goes in there. And so you just gotta keep working it until there's like no uncoated flour with butter, and they do get back into those pea-sized little pieces. So it'll just take a little bit of time, and after this you add the water, which I will show once all of this is done. Tablespoon by tablespoon. You don't want to get this mixture too wet. If it's too wet, the dough won't be flaky. It just won't be like a normal pie dough. So you really gotta kind of be careful about what you do when adding the water to the mixture. This is kind of what you want it to look like. It kind of feels like breadcrumbs. I mean, it's not, you got some pea-sized pieces in there, which is what you want, but for the most part, it's not really pea-sized. It's kind of just like a bunch of crumbs. I mean, it feels like crumbs. It has the same texture. It kind of looks like crumbs, but you do want those small little piece sizes. Those are just clumps of butter that are in there. But for the most part, it's not all gonna be just like big pea-sized pieces. So next you're going to take ice water. So this has been just cold water that's been in the fridge. I put a couple ice cubes in, and you're gonna add it in just a few tablespoons at a time. This you're just kind of stir and kind of fold in on itself. And so for this, you're just kind of looking for it to stay and hold a shape together. So you don't want it to be too completely uniform, like super smooth yet, but you do want it to kind of hold its shape. So ultimately I just put in 6 tablespoons of water, and now it's starting to pinch together and hold its shape. So that is indicator that it's time to put it on the counter and start working it into a ball. But yeah, you just kind of work it into a ball until it all kind of stays together, and some of it will remain dry, but it'll get worked in eventually. And if you need to put it back in the bowl and add more water to it, you can. That's always acceptable too. I mean, there's no one perfect way to do this. And so you see how it kind of crumbles. That is good. It means that it should be a pretty flaky crust whenever you bake it. And so it's gonna keep falling apart for a little bit, but eventually it'll get to a place where it holds its shape and you can wrap it up and stick it in the refrigerator to let it rest. So this is kind of what we're looking for. Just all formed into a ball, and that was all that we needed. So now we're going to take it and we're going to split it in half, just the best you can, and now you have 2 little pieces, and that's going to be your top and bottom crust. So now we're just going to form them into little discs and wrap them up in plastic wrap, and you let them sit for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then during that time you can start making your filling for your pot pie. So here's just the end product of that, and you just wrap them up. They're little discs, and you set them in the fridge, and just let them rest for 30 minutes to an hour. So about 2:45 to 3 is when we'll take them out and we'll start rolling them out. Okay, so I came across this recipe actually, I think it was last summer, when Noah and I were having a date or something, and I decided just to make dinner that night. But his favorite food before we were vegetarian was chicken pot pie, and it was just a store-bought one or something, frozen. So I decided I was gonna make a homemade vegetable pot pie, and I made it, and he loved it, and so then a few months later, I made it for our friends at college, and they loved it. One of them's really picky and everything, so we weren't sure how she was gonna feel, but she really liked it. And then I made it for my family, and they all loved it. So here we are, the first recipe on whatever this segment is gonna be called. Making vegetable pot pie. We have all of our vegetables laid out. We might need one more carrot, so it's 2 potatoes, and this is for both pot pies if you're making 2. Which, if you only want to make 1 to eat, because like if it was just me and Noah, we would just make 1 probably, but you can freeze the other one really well, or just freeze the filling and make it later. But for 2 whole pot pies, you need 2 to 3 medium-sized carrots, 1 to 2 stalks of celery, which they're over here, they're all just laid out all over the place, 2 potatoes, and I think 1 onion. So just a reminder, so I do have enough vegetables for both 2 pot pies, and so but that pie crust, just to reiterate, is only for 1 pie. It's the top and bottom for 1 pie, and that's all that makes. So if you want to make 2, you'll have to, but I again just bought the store-bought one because I'm making dinner. This is also going to be dinner for my family tonight per my mom's request, because she is obsessed with this pot pie, and so I'm just going to use the store-bought one probably for them, or I might bring both of them home. So these bigger pieces I'm just gonna try to kind of chop in half, because we don't need these really big unnecessary carrot pieces in there. But yeah, we're just gonna make sure they're all pretty small and uniform, and then we're gonna cut up, oops, okay, well, there goes part of 1 carrot. So now we're going to just make sure they're all these small little bite-sized pieces, because no one wants just a huge chunk of carrot in their pot pie, especially Noah, who is not a huge fan of carrots in general. But I'm still gonna include them because I'm gonna do what I want, so. So, I already have cut up some celery, so I like to try and do equal parts carrot and celery. There might not be exact, there is no exact measurements or science to how this is made. It's just whatever you prefer. If you don't like carrots as much, you can put in more celery or more potatoes or more onion or whatever you want to do. This is just personally how I like to do it anyway. So cutting the celery, I already washed it off. I'm just gonna cut off those bits that have that dirt and stuff on them, because they're clean, but I could not get it off. And then I'm gonna cut it down the middle, and then I'm just gonna cut each of those pieces down their middle again. So, and then just cut them up into little bite-sized pieces. And this has been 3 stalks of celery, and that's probably all I'll use, even though it's probably not gonna be quite as much carrot as I had used, but oh well. Celery is just kind of a filler ingredient anyway. It doesn't provide a whole lot of flavor, just mainly texture. So if you really just don't like celery, then don't include it. Include corn or include something else, whatever you want. This recipe is not one that just has to be followed exactly how it is. Like, I think the original recipe that I found just called for 1 stalk of celery, and this has been 3. I put 3 in this, so it's just whatever, because the original recipe also calls for like vegetarian chicken, but I'm not using that. This was all vegetables, and that's all that's going in it. So we also kind of need a little more filler too, because we're not gonna have those big chunks of fake chicken in there. But if you want to use chicken, then go ahead, or you could easily add real chicken if you are not a vegetarian and watching this video. So it's a very easy recipe to customize. Now I'm just chopping up the potatoes into little cubes, and so sometimes potatoes can be a little hard to cut through, at least for me if you have a really dull knife. So shout out to my grandma for buying me this ceramic knife. They're so good. I love them. I don't know if you can buy them in a knife set or what, but she just used to have them all around her house. And whenever I'd go to her house, because that's where I started cooking back when I was like a child, I would always ask to cut things with these, cut up the vegetables or fruit or whatever with these ceramic knives, and they're really just amazing. I really love them, but she just recently got me this one to add to my kitchen collection for college. So I already cut off the end. Make sure you leave the hairy part intact. And you just cut it in half. So we are gonna use this whole onion, but I'm still gonna cut it in half just for purposes of dicing it. And it can be a dice or a rough chop or whatever. I mean, do whatever. Just do whatever you want. So you can cut it halfway like that. Don't cut it all the way through. You don't have to do that though. And then you just essentially just take it and just make little cut marks long ways on the onion, and sometimes they'll fall out and sometimes they won't. And again, not a professional, just kind of doing things. But this is technically how you're supposed to cut an onion, I'm pretty sure. But whatever. But so maybe one day, because we don't know where our official set will be if we do more of these videos, but I'm sure some of them will probably be filmed in our apartment back at college. And if so, if we ever encounter an onion that just makes me start crying really bad, you'll get to see me in my ridiculous chemistry goggles that I wear sometimes. I don't have them here today, but this one is pretty mild. It's not bad. It's not making me cry or anything, but Noah always likes to make fun of me because I keep my old chemistry goggles in the kitchen drawer for kitchen cooking purposes. And him and my friends just love to tease me about that because it's so ridiculous that I even do it. And I agree it is, but whatever. So now we're just gonna cut along the width of it, and you have it already diced for you. So you have all these little pieces that'll just fall apart. And it's stuck to me. And that is probably the easiest way to cut an onion so that it's diced. And see, you have these big pieces that fall apart, and I don't know how to prevent that. So I mean, you can go watch a better tutorial on how to do this because I'm definitely not the best source of this information. I just learned from, I mean, for a long time, I just cut an onion. I didn't even know this until my sister showed me, and I was just cutting an onion up in no fashion, like no pattern, there was nothing to it. It was just, oh, let me just cut up this onion and to completely destroy it and just keep doing this on the board until it gets cut. It worked enough, but it took me 30 minutes to cut an onion. So next we're gonna start on our filling. So we need to add 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and then 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Okay. And try not to spill it all over the place. So that you're gonna start heating that up on a medium setting. So I just put mine right in between high and low. Just set it to a medium high. And then we're just gonna start adding all of our stuff. So all of our celery, all the carrots, hope this pan is big enough, all the potato, and all of the onion, which is quite a lot. And I know if I try and do it, then I'm gonna spill it, so I'm just gonna do it with my hands. Again, they're clean, I promise. And this is quite a lot of onion. I don't know if I'll include the whole thing since it is so much. I might include 3/4 of it or so. But I just don't really like too big of an onion flavor, but I chopped it all up just in case. Anyway, it was kind of a large onion. A medium onion is what you're looking for. And then I like to add just a little bit of garlic. I forgot to grab the whole garlic clove, so right now we're just going to use the pre-chopped garlic. Everything else in this video is fancy except for this. So I just, you know, you just kind of gotta measure garlic with your heart. You can't just go, you cannot just go on and go 2 cloves of garlic, because 2 cloves of garlic actually probably means like 5 cloves. So unless you hate garlic, then I guess don't do that. Okay, so I actually decided that in order to cook everything better, I'm going to move it all over to this flatter, larger pan instead of this pot, and it'll be fine. I mean, like, you can cook it on anything that will fit it. Oh, ignore that. Anyway, so now this will just cook everything a little bit more evenly. Make sure all the vegetables get cooked and they're not just stacked on top of each other. It also makes it a little bit easier to stir around, but it will also be able to hold all the liquids that we want to put in it. So just make sure you choose a good sized pan before you put everything in there, because otherwise you're gonna have more work like me in cleaning it. So okay, so we need vegetable broth. So instead of buying lots and lots of little boxes or cans of vegetable broth, I'm going to use this Better Than Bouillon vegetable stuff. So you need 1 teaspoon of this for every 8-ounce can, essentially, of vegetables. So you're supposed to mix 1 teaspoon into 8 ounces of boiling water. So we need 3 cups of vegetable broth. So we're going to put 3 teaspoons into 3 cups of boiling water, and then we're going to 3. It's equal parts. And we're just gonna stir it in and let that kind of soak. I've never used this stuff before, but I figured it might be a better investment than get it all off there, than just continuing to buy packages and cans, which would provide more waste, which isn't a good thing. So trying to lessen the waste as much as possible with this. So just go ahead and stir that in, and then you got a little bit of vegetable broth right there. So next we have to add 6 tablespoons of flour. Yes, 6, it's quite a lot, to this mixture of vegetables and oil and butter. And this is to make it thicker once we add the liquid. So once all the liquid kind of boils off, it will thicken this. And I'm sure you could add cornstarch or whatever, but I'm using flour just because I like to use flour in it. There's no specific reason. So you just kind of add it all in. You don't have to sprinkle it all in little parts or anything. And you can just keep your burner on whatever it's been on. So now that this vegetable broth is ready, we're just going to take it and just dump it on into this vegetable mixture. So, and that's all you need to do with that. And then you have to just bring this to a big boil and let it go on that boil for 2 minutes. And then you can reduce the heat, and we will add the rest of the ingredients, and then it should be about ready to put into the pie crust. So this has boiled for 2 minutes, and I turned the heat down to almost a low warm setting. And now I'm going to add in 2/3 cup of frozen peas. You could use fresh ones if you wanted, or canned ones. I like to use the frozen ones, it's just easy. Mix that in. Then we're going to add in this mixture of spices. It's, I think, 1 tablespoon of parsley, and then it's a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and then 1/2 teaspoon of garlic salt. So we're just gonna add that in. Get all the garlic salt from the bottom there. And then 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. And so, as you can see, this is kind of thickened up. I don't know how well it shows over the camera, but it's significantly thicker than it was. Okay, so now these have been taken out of the refrigerator and just need to be rolled out into a little larger than 9 inches in diameter. The pans are 9 inches also, so they need to just fit in there. And so we already have the bottom one rolled out and in here. And so now we're just trying to get this rolled out big enough so that it will go on top. to get it ready for whenever we put the filling in. And so rolling it out on parchment paper kind of helps. I mean, it slides a little bit. So you can just flour the counter if that's what you prefer, but right now we're just rolling out where you need to put it in the stuff. Okay, so now you just put this right in there. So this is not the homemade crust, this is the other one. So this is the homemade crust bottom, and you just fill it equal parts in each one. Oops, now I'm gonna make a mess. Until they're all completely full, and they should be pretty full. And then you'll just put the pie top on there, cut some slits, and then basically just put it in the oven, which needs to be preheated at 375, which we already have done that. We got the top on. You just pinch these together, and this might look really bad, it might look really good. I like to cut these slits into to allow some airflow through the pie so it doesn't just like explode in the oven. I like to cut them after I roll it out and before I put it on here. And you just kind of cut off all the excess around the pie after it's all pinched together. Those aren't in the center, but it's fine. I just realized that. Okay, so once all of that is done, if you want, you can just crimp it like that all the way around the top. So you just put one finger right there and two fingers on the edge and crimp the sides. So that's to give it a nice little pretty crust in it, so it's not just like this straight line that you just cut across. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, it's just whatever you want to do, and if you just want to leave it like that, I'm sure it would cook fine and not cause any problems. But as long as you have the two crusts well pushed together so that nothing leaks out of them, then everything should be okay. Okay, so the very last step is to whip together 1 tablespoon of heavy cream with an egg, just a whole egg, and then just brush it over the tops, just like that. And then once it's all brushed over, then we'll put it in the oven for 40 to 45 minutes until this crust gets a really nice golden brown color, which is what this little egg wash type thing is used for. This is what causes it to get that really nice brown color that we're looking for these. And yeah, so they'll just go in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven, just to clarify, and then they'll bake for 40 to 45 minutes. So this is the finished product. This is the homemade crust, and this one is the store-bought. As you can see, it kind of exploded a little bit, but that's okay. So yeah, they got this really nice golden brown color after about 42 minutes of cooking, and now they're ready. They need to rest for 10 minutes so the stuff isn't just soup inside, and then you can cut into them and enjoy. So this is the final product. This is a piece. Sorry it's in a bowl. It's not the most ideal for seeing it, but it's best for eating it. So it just all kind of stays together after you wait 10 minutes. And yeah, so that's how you make a vegetable pot pie. And see you guys later.
Tucker, come here. Say hi. Tucker, say hi.